Hello everyone and welcome to this week's video where today I'm going to film my 13-week pregnancy update. So as always, if you see me looking down throughout this video, I have just got my notebook here in front of me with all the bits that I've noted down throughout the week. So in this video I'm going to talk through all the symptoms that I've had this week. I've had lots of new ones this week and some that have actually gone. I also did have my 12-week scan, so I'll talk through everything that involved later on in the video. So I'll start off with talking through the things that have stayed the same for me this week, and to be honest there's not much that has stayed the same. A lot of the old symptoms I had gone, and I did speak last week about how I'm able to eat a lot more foods now, which is great. I've continued to feel like that throughout this week, which was good. I have also still been going to bed really early, and unfortunately I am still getting that unwell feeling just before lunchtime. I thought last week that had gone a bit, but I think maybe just with being away it kind of distracted me from the feeling. But I've noticed this week, now that I'm back at work, I have started to feel a little bit unwell on that hour before lunchtime again. So I'm going to talk through now some of the new symptoms that I've been experiencing this week. So to start off with, going on with the hunger and food, I've not particularly felt really very hungry at all this week. Now I would say I have kind of been a bit like that throughout the pregnancy. However, particularly this week, it's kind of got to lunchtime and dinner times and I've not really felt like eating. Obviously I've just forced myself to keep eating to an amount that I think would be suitable for a meal. But yeah, just not really been feeling that hunger this week so much. Another new thing that I've particularly noticed this week is acne. So throughout my adulthood, basically, I have struggled with my skin. I have been on different treatments for acne and I'm kind of at the last stage before they try something a bit stronger now, but obviously whilst I'm pregnant I'm not on any kind of medication or creams for that. So I have noticed that I am getting a lot of hormonal spots and acne again, especially kind of around my chin and up my cheeks here and this kind of area. That tends to be my worst hit. Obviously I am wearing makeup, but you can still see it underneath. But yeah, I have noticed quite a lot more appearing over the last week. So I have also had 1 or 2 nosebleeds this week. Now I have had them in the past. I don't tend to get them that often, but I do tend to get them if I'm sleeping somewhere that's too hot for me. That tends to be like my trigger for having a nosebleed. I'll have one in the morning if I've been too hot whilst I'm asleep. And where it is getting a bit colder outside now, the heating has been on a bit more, so I think that could possibly be the cause of my nosebleeds. However, I have also heard that it's very common to have nosebleeds throughout your second trimester in pregnancy, and I have hit the second trimester now, which is exciting, but it also feels like it's gone so quickly already. I have also been having a few headaches through this week. Again, headaches is something that I personally struggle with kind of on and off. I tend to know what my triggers are for headaches, so it tends to be if I've been doing long drives, if I've not had enough sleep, or again if I've been too hot overnight, then I tend to get headaches as well. However, I haven't noticed anything particularly that would have triggered the headache this week. Sometimes I do just get them, but yeah, I did have a few this week, so it's something that I have noted down, as I've also seen that can be quite common in your second trimester in pregnancy as well. I have been a little bit more emotional this week. Again, as mentioned, this is pretty much on and off week to week. Some weeks I have a great week and then other weeks I have days of being a little bit more emotional. However, I think with having the hormonal acne, that probably coincides with my emotions as well this week. Yeah, it's just something I struggle with when my hormones are a bit all over the place, so I've noticed that a little bit again this week. Another thing that I've also noticed this week is in the evenings, sometimes when I get in, I will have a little lie down for like 10 minutes before I get up and do all the jobs that I need to. However, I think once I've like relaxed and lied on my back slightly, I am getting really severe lower back pain. It feels like it's kind of like sciatic and on the nerve a little bit, but I think where I've had a busy day and then just stopped and relaxed, yeah, is causing that. But I've noticed that pretty much every day over the last week. Not so much of a fun symptom, but I've noticed that constipation has come back a little bit this week. That is something I really struggled with in my first pregnancy, especially further along in my third trimester. I don't necessarily remember it so much in the second trimester. However, I've heard again it is quite common to happen in the second trimester. So yeah, I have started to notice that a little bit again. Now, as mentioned at the start of the video, I did also have my 12-week scan this week. I was over 13 weeks when I went for my scan, as I was away last week, so I wasn't able to book it for then. So at this appointment, I had my scan, I had a blood test, and I also had a consultant appointment, as I am classed as high risk and consultant led throughout this pregnancy. So before I went into any of my appointments, I was kind of just called into this little side bit, and before I went in, they weighed me. They also asked me a couple of questions, such as if I was a smoker, which I am not, and also if I had had any fertility treatment, which I have not either. And yeah, then I was asked to go back and wait in the waiting room. So I was then called in to go for my scan, and that kind of lasted around 20 minutes-ish. Just a little side note, I did have to take my belly button piercing out for the scan. I had previously asked when I booked it if I'd need to do that, and they told me I did not. But yeah, just for future reference, and so I can remember, you do need to take out piercings before the scan. So when I went in there, she confirmed that there was only one baby, and she also measured the fluid behind the neck, and she said that was all looking good, so that's great. She was saying the baby was very active. Just on the scan video, it was just jumping around all the time, which was quite funny. It was making me laugh, but then every time I laughed, the baby would move more, so it was a bit of a vicious cycle. The baby did also have its hands up around its face through the scan as well, which was very cute to see. But yeah, she did all my dates, and I was measuring pretty accurately to what I thought I'd be. I am measuring 1 day ahead of where I thought I was, so pretty much spot on, which they told me rarely happens actually. So yeah, that was good. And yeah, I was in there, as I said, for about 20 minutes. It did start to feel a little bit uncomfortable because they do have to press quite hard with the ultrasound. This was a little bit uncomfortable, so maybe next time if I start to feel it's getting a bit like that, I would mention to the person who was doing the ultrasound and just see if they could like give me a break or readjust, because yeah, where the baby had its hands up around its face, it was getting quite uncomfortable where she was like pressing in so much towards the end. So following my scan, I had to go back into the waiting room again before being called in to have a blood test done. So yeah, that was just a blood test to test for how at risk you are for the baby developing any conditions. So I got those results back a couple of days later, and they all came back low risk, which was good. Following that, I was also then sent back into the waiting room before being called in for my consultant appointment. So in there wasn't really too much to talk through, to be honest. It was just mentioned that I would need 2 more scans, as I was high risk, to monitor my pregnancy. So that would be done at 32 weeks and at 36 weeks. So that is just to check for the growth, as I am more at risk of having a smaller baby. So they will just monitor that throughout the pregnancy. The consultant also mentioned that the baby will need to be monitored after birth, just as I'd been on medication, just to check that everything was okay there. But yeah, pretty much all the information from the consultant appointment is what I'd been told previously anyway. So yeah, not too much new to report there. So yeah, that was kind of everything that happened at the 12-week scan. The appointment was a lot longer than I thought it would be. However, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out because I knew that it was like a consultant appointment. I didn't know whether that meant someone different was doing the ultrasound or how that was quite going to work. But yeah, I think because I was back and forward between different rooms, it just ended up taking quite a long time whilst I was in there. But yeah, it's really good to know that everything is as it should be. Yeah, which is really nice. One other thing that I also wanted to add in this week is I do feel like I may have felt a little tiny bit of a flutter from the baby right at the end of the week. So although that is crazy early and I wouldn't expect to feel it, I think where I've had a previous pregnancy before, I kind of know what the feeling is like. I think if I hadn't been pregnant before, I would kind of think nothing of it, but I recognise that as what very early movements feel like. Now, I probably was nearly 14 weeks by this point. However, after a bit of research, I don't think it's completely unheard of to be able to feel movements from that early on. I did only feel it once, but yeah, I think it could have been movements. Obviously in the scan the baby was very active, so it could make sense that that was what I was feeling, which if it was is super exciting. But that's it for all the updates this week, so I'll go ahead now and show you my 13-week pregnancy bump update. So this is the bump at 13 weeks and 6 days. Sorry, you can see my top all folded up around there, but yeah, 13 weeks and 6 days. So that's it for my 13-week pregnancy update. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.